This is Sneaker Gears. My name is Levi, and welcome to a special episode where today we're going through all the Kobe and LeBron midsoles and Nike Metcon midsoles that you can use and change. And what updates have we seen in the last few years since I did this video a few years ago here in 2020? This is going to be a lot of information, so hang in there and let's jump right in. Thank you for joining us here today. If you haven't already, please subscribe down below, as well as hit that notification for when new videos come out. Now, if you like that video, give it a thumbs up at the end and let me know if I missed anything. So obviously today we are talking about midsoles, insoles, what works with what. Obviously, with Kobe passing and with it becoming harder and harder to find a Kobe shoe, a lot of times if you do find one, you kind of have to replace the cushion. You know, they've been worn in, they've worn out. The first cushion that was released with the Kobe 8 and the Kobe 9 was just a standard Lunar drop-in midsole. Nothing really special, but it's really light. This weighs a couple ounces. If I put on scale, maybe 2 ounces, 3 ounces. It's actually decently thick. So even though it's very light, you get a lot of impact protection. You still feel close to the court, and it was just an awesome, perfectly balanced cushion setup to feel fast, protect your body while you're on the court, and just do a great job where it has a little bit of bounce to it. The only negative, and obviously, you know, things are not perfect, is it does bottom out quick, depending how long you play, how often you play, how big of a player you are. Like myself, these are cushions that can definitely wear out, where when you put a new pair on and all of a sudden you try your older pair, you'll be like, man, these feel like rocks, like they are hard underneath. So this is one you definitely end up having to replace, as well as if you buy a used pair, even if they look in great condition, a lot of times the cushion is just not quite right. So we're going to jump in on some of the things you can replace those with and some of the newer options we have here in 2020. So starting off, I just want to do kind of a very quick recap. The Kobe 8, the Kobe 9, and the Kobe 11 all had very similar drop-in midsoles, but a lot of people forget the other shoes around that. Now, the Kobe 8 is going on 7 years old at this point, so these shoes are getting harder to find. But you also have the Jordan 25 and 26, technically even older than that, 10 years and 9 years old. You have the LeBron 11, which again, this is coming on that same 7 years old. Now, this is something that was built like a tank with that foam posit, so it is a little easier to find a great condition new version of one of these. This was the anthracite colorway that I have very little use on, and I do have probably 5 pairs of these. It was a very popular, this is something you probably have already seen, maybe in my channel or not. You are able to use the LeBron midsole in the Kobe's. This has a full-length zoom air, but you probably didn't realize this is not the only way to get full-length zoom in your Kobe's. Now, this is a little bit thicker, as you probably can just kind of guess the differences here. So if you're putting a LeBron midsole inside of a Kobe, and this goes with any of the thicker midsoles, you actually want to wear it and break it in some. When you first put it in, depending on your foot, and we'll grab the Kobe 8 here, what happens is you're raising your foot. So when you raise your foot, all of a sudden everything on top begins to feel tight. As you break this in, and as the Lunar kind of begins to settle a little bit and mold to your foot, it fits perfect. Now, as far as sizing, ideally you want to go size for size. If you're a 13, like I am, get a 13. If you're a 10, get a 10. But because these are a little bit larger, it doesn't hurt to go down a half size or even a full size. So this is a 12, this is a 13, and this will go in pretty much without an issue. And if you guys want to see how similar that is, obviously there's maybe a tiny bit of space in the front, but it's not really enough that's going to make a difference. It's not going to shift on you, and you're going to find it still works just as good as even if you got the exact same size. So hopefully that gives you a little heads up on sizing. Now, I know mostly we're talking about Kobe's, but if you're playing basketball, obviously you need to do a lot of training. So I definitely want to give a shout out and a heads up to Nike's Metcon line. This is a Metcon Free 3. They changed it to the Metcon Flyknit kind of going forward, but a lot of the Metcons lines, from Metcon 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Metcon Free, a majority of them, and I'll grab a pair here, use drop-in midsoles just like your Kobe's. Now again, these are meant for lifting and having a very stable platform with some cardio. So if you put these in your Kobe's to play basketball, you're probably not going to like it. But if you put them in your Kobe's and then do some squats or deadlifts, all of a sudden you actually have a really capable shoe in your basketball shoe that's just as capable as if you just kept the Metcons on. Now, I wanted to go through these a little bit quickly just so you guys know what you possibly could use and swap in. I actually regularly put my Kobe midsoles in my other Metcons if I know I'm going to use them for some running on that training day. So it's kind of versatile what you can use it with. Now the first Metcon came with this really thin drop-in midsole. This is very stiff, has a few flex joints, and this is the same midsole used on the Metcon 1, 2, and 3. Don't get it, don't worry about that one. Now this is one used on the Metcon Free. You can see hopefully a lot of these flex grooves. This is also using one that doesn't squeak as much. It's again still super dense, but it is flexible. So this is something that you're not getting almost any cushion, but you are getting something that's moving with your body and that you can definitely use. It's serviceable. Now I want to get into some of the good stuff. Going forward with the Metcon, I believe it was the 4 and then the 5. They are now using, or the 5, forgive me, now the 6. So Metcon 5 and 6 are using this new drop-in midsole that uses a much firmer heel where you have that stability that you need, but ironically is still softer than the older ones, and a super squishy and flexible forefoot, and this absolutely can work in a basketball setting. Now again, this is still quite a bit less cushion than a Lunar setup, but these are very comfortable, very flexible, and it's something you could get away with, and that's on the Metcon 5 and 6. Now comes to kind of some of the good stuff. So the Metcon Sport is one that came with this one. This actually reminds me a lot of Lunar. It has little M's here, or has the little kind of insignia of the outsole of what they've done for a lot of the traction patterns on Metcons. I don't know if you can see kind of the triangle pattern here, but this has a built-in heel cup, which actually works really well with something like the Mamba line that didn't have much durability, and we'll get to that in a second, as well as has a nice consistent where it kind of feels like Lunar but just thinner. So this can work, but what you're going to notice is when you have a little bit thinner of a cushion, you will need to use some sort of cushion to uplift it. Now we use our sneaker gears, here you go, Velocity insoles. This, if you put it underneath, all of a sudden gives you a really nice platform where you're meeting the height that you need to use in a Kobe 8, a Kobe 9, a Kobe 11. So that's something, hopefully we can get production back going with COVID. We have run out a majority of sizes on these, and this completely changes the cushion on any shoe, but all of a sudden really starts to enhance some of the shoes with drop-in and midsoles. And then finally this year with the Metcon Flyknit, they used a full React drop-in midsole. Now, even though this is React and this is actually pretty comfortable for a training shoe, it's still rather thin. You need that drop-in, or you need the Velocity insole to really give it a little more height comparatively. And let's see, let me grab the standard. You can tell the difference is quite significant there. Even when this wears out, this is just a much thinner midsole. Now, this is something that's still not an insole. You can't put it in any shoe, but as a midsole, this is something that is right in the middle. You could use it for basketball, but it's not giving you just enough cushioning, and we'll have some other options there. But this is a really nice compromise between training and basketball, and maybe one that if you get the Metcon Flyknit on a good discount, you can alternate some of those and use this in something like your Mamba line, like the Mamba Rage. Now, one set of midsoles we're not talking about is the Air Force 1 line. The Air Force, there was a kind of luxurious one that had a drop-in Lunar with an air unit in the heel that was released, as well as they have the Air Force 1 React, and that has a drop-in midsole as well. Both of those have completely different shapes because of the Air Force 1 tooling, and they don't quite work with the rest of the lineup between Kobe's or Jordan's, Lebrons, and even Metcons. So I did not get those, even though those are quite comfortable. You're not getting the same flexibility that you're looking for. Now, a lot of you players, both boys and girls, know you can get the Kobe 8. You can get the Kobe 9, the 11, the Lebron. But one that goes under the radar and two that go over the radar are actually going to be the Kobe 11 standard, the mesh. Now, I actually do have some Kobe 9 meshes, but if you get those, not the fly knit, you're able to save quite a bit of money. And they work just as well. Now, these didn't quite come in all of the kind of hype colorways, but if you can get them, one, they work perfectly well with any of the midsoles. This is the this is the Kobe 11 Elite midsole. This is probably one of my favorites. This is Lunar with all the flexible cutouts like we saw kind of from the Metcon line, and a really thick zoom pad in the heel. That's another reason why I really didn't care to try the Air Force Ones, because we already have a really good version. Another one you can try out is going to be the Mamba line, as far as anything besides the new Mamba Fury. This one, I think they had the Instinct, the Rage, and one other one. Hit me in the comments below if you guys remember. But this works perfectly well. It actually uses, let's take a look here, a full drop-in Lunar Midsole. And surprisingly, this is pretty much the exact same shoe as the Kobe 8 you see behind me here, except it doesn't have the shank, so it doesn't have quite the stability, and it doesn't have that rigid out exterior heel cup in combination with the internal one. So they save some money, but you're getting a really nice knit. You're getting a little more durable outsole. This is made for outdoors, and you're still getting that drop-in Lunar midsole that you're able to use on any of the other Kobes as well. So if you're looking for a Kobe and you don't want to spend kind of the money that maybe they're charging nowadays, or you just can't find one in your size, don't forget to look at the Mamba line. All right, so let's jump back into that full-length zoom comparison that I was referring to. Before, if you wanted full-length zoom, you really just had to get the Lebron 11 midsole. There really wasn't any other options. But I wanted to show you two different options that may work for you. Maybe three, no, two different ones. One is going to be the Nike 11 ID. If you guys can find any Nike IDs, even if they're beat up, message them on eBay and see if they came with this full-length zoom option. This was one I was able to get when I did a custom for the Mamba ID pair, and it's awesome. Now again, this is not using lunar cushioning, so a lot of folks who wanted to try this, you still have some of the bounce, but you don't have any of the plushness. So this is more Kobe-like than LeBron. You're not getting that super plush high riding midsole. This is a little bit thinner. It's going to fit your Kobes just fine, and this is something that is really cool. I'm glad I have it in my collection, but it is harder to get. Another secret one that a lot of folks don't know is going to be the Kobe 7 Elite, which came with a full-length zoom in midsole. And I don't know if you guys can see the cutout where it says zoom. Let's see if it grabs it there. This cutout actually goes full length, and although it has the tongue, two things you can do. One, you can just cut out this tongue if you know you're going to use it in your Kobe 8, 9, 11. But this tongue actually fits perfectly fine in my Kobe 8s. In my Kobe 9s, it was a little less comfortable, but it worked. And I haven't tried it in the Kobe 11. So this is something that would work just fine, even though it has this flimsy tongue. You could cut this off really easily, just has some stitches on the side. I remember when Nightwing did his review on these way back a long time ago, I think he did cut a portion of these because he had some issues with rubbing. I never had that. But this is a full-length zoom from the Kobe 7 Elite, and it does work just fine. Now the Kobe 7 did start the Kobe system, and all of those drop-in midsoles are going to work. One, they're full-length Cushlon versus Lunar, so they do last a little bit long for the Kobe Power version. And I think the other one did have zoom in the heel. So you have a couple different options, which is really cool. Final option I wanted to provide you guys is from the Jordan 25. Now this is one that I think works really well with the Mamba line because it comes with a built-in carbon fiber shank. This actually, if you remove the insole, has a top-loaded heel and forefoot zoom. This one works just fine in the Kobe 8, in the Kobe 9, and the Kobe 11. I think it is a little bit too thin, but one thing I've just realized, and I do have to try this out to see how they perform, is the insoles that you can get from the Converse Chuck Taylor line. This is an insole that's definitely on the thicker side, but not quite a midsole that is Lunar. The new React BB NXT uses a React midsole or insole. These actually fit inside of that Zoom and give it just that extra little bit of height that you need where they work in your Kobe's. Now again, we're talking about a combination of 2010 and 2020 technology, but it's React with Zoom in a sick setup that you can put in something like the Mamba Rage. That's a $50 shoe on eBay, and you have an elite cushion setup that you're just kind of rigging together. Same thing with the Lunar right here. This is from a Chuck Taylor, the Chuck Taylor 2 specifically, and they've used this in a lot of the Converse line. This is something that you can get these shoes for 40, 50, 60 bucks. Drop them in and you're good to go. This is a Lunar and Zoom combination. This is something that is awesome that I've been playing around with over the years between the Kobe 7 and now with the Jordan 25 that just works and give a really comfortable setup if you're wondering what you could try. Now, just to throw it back to the Jordan 26, that's the one above, obviously the 25, I believe was just called the 2012, wasn't given a number back then. They came with 3 different drop-in midsoles. These are on the thinner side, very similar to what we have, excuse me here, on the React. So you guys can see these are really similar. This actually would be a really good drop in on the Jordan 2012, but this one, they had one with full length air, which is kind of nice, and they have one with heel zoom and like Cushlon, and then they have this one with air in the heel, zoom air in the forefoot, articulated. Now because this is bottom loaded, you don't feel it as much, and because this is a little bit thinner, again, this is one of those you may need like a Velocity insole or some other insole to give it a little bit of height that might work. But if you're on the hunt for one of these or you're looking for a replacement, these can work as long as you have either a Velocity insole or some kind of other thinner insole that's going to give it the height that you need. And finally, we have the latest versions of the Kobe line, which is the Kobe 360 NXT and the NXT 3, the one you pull, forgive me, I'm even forgetting the name, but both of those are using a version of the huge midsole. These really don't fit unless you get a size down, and even then it's kind of a tight fit. So a size 12 in these fits in my size 13 shoes, but the size 12 does not go in my size 12. So essentially, if you have a size smaller, which even if it doesn't fit you, maybe you can utilize that cushion. Now this is from the Kobe, where it has the shank plate built in. This has React and Lunar, and this is just fantastic. It has additional support pieces here for rigidity. This is a really advanced piece of tech that's just a midsole, but it's also really big. Now this does fit perfectly in our Lebron 11s. So if you have a Lebron 11 and you're really looking to kick it up a notch, the Kobe 360 is phenomenal. Now, if you get the one like this, I have not been able to, but I had an awesome guy, I'll put his tag here on Instagram, who says very carefully he was able to remove his midsole. And I say very carefully because the middle of the midsole, and I don't know if you guys can see here, has a cutout for how the system actually ties itself. So when you pull this to tie itself, it's built in, you have cables going throughout the shoe. I don't know if I recommend it, but if you have one that you've worn through, you beat it up, take out that cushioning and keep using it, it's going to see or feel very similar to this, except it's going to be that full React versus that React and Lunar. I believe this is React and Cushlon. So it's still, I like this one a little bit better. And maybe if I get another pair of these, I'll get a size smaller and I can try to use that in other shoes. But these are both expensive options that are hard to get, even by today's standards. So what other option do you have? And this I provide you is the newest Kobe that everyone sleeps on, the Converse line. The Converse All-Star BB. The new version for 2020 is the BB Evo, which just uses a newer upper. But this is using a full-length React, much like we have here on the training side, except it has those high side rails there, so it'll help with containment. Now, this actually does begin to soften up as you play in it, so it feels pretty good. It's not as bouncy and light as the Lunar, but it still does a great job absorbing impact, have a little bit of bounce to it. This doesn't have all the tech that the Kobe 360 does, but it does cost a lot less. It's a lot easier available for you guys to get it. And again, if you go a size down, it does work. I was able to get this in a size 12, so the shoe does fit a little tight, but it has broken in, and this is fitting decently in my size 13 Kobe's. Now I still want to play in a bit more, see if it reacts, and give you guys a better answer as to is this going to work perfectly or not. But if you're a Kobe fan, jump on those Converse All-Star BB. It's essentially designed by the same designer that does Kobe's, and it's using the technology that's not available in any other Nike shoe. And I don't know if I want to say it's better, but it's definitely very quintessential Kobe, which is kind of what we all miss and love right now. All right, the last one is a little sneak peek that is hard to find. You'll probably never use, but I just want to throw it out there so I have my full midsole collection on display, and that is the Lunar Midsole from before the Metcon line. It was called the Hyperfeel. Now, this actually has a rigid heel, or somewhat rigid, just because it's meant for training. Has that little bit of lateral stability, so it actually could be used for basketball, but it is much thinner. And you can actually see this has a lot more of those flex grooves. Now, this is the Hyperfeel trainer. They did have a Hyperfeel runner that's a lot thicker and has deep cuts. I have those, actually I'm looking at them right here, but those are just for running. They're very unstable, so I wouldn't use those in a basketball shoe. The training version, I actually loved using these in the initial Metcon Flyknit, or what's the original name on these? The Metcon DSX. But these work really well where you have a Flyknit flexible shoe, have Lunar, and this is just an awesome combination of two shoes that didn't work separately, but I think once you put them together, it was an awesome shoe. Now, can you use that in some of your basketball shoes? You can, but what happens is you're really going to sacrifice some of that containment as well as the lockdown because you're losing so much cushion on the height. So it's not able to kind of grab your foot as you would really like it. But this is one I just love and I wanted to show you guys. Hopefully you guys liked that video. Last time we did this was a couple years ago, so I did want to give you some of the updated options you have and some of the things that have worked that have shocked me. And if you're on the hunt on eBay, on GOAT, on StockX for a Kobe or a replacement cushion for your Kobe's, hopefully some of these options can help you out so you can get the best shoe possible so you can perform on court. Now, for all my Metcon and training folks, same thing. You swap those Metcons, get one, use the other. If you find one on sale, use that information and kind of make that best shoe that you need for your training methods. Guys, this is Levi with Sneaker Gears. I really appreciate you. Hopefully you found this helpful. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up, and I will come at you later.